Lowain's been a very strong character for quite some time now, with many players regarding him as a top 5 character, something that is a little atypical for the archetype that he is. So let's see what Cygames and Arc System Works have done to balance him out in this patch. There's actually a couple really good changes in here that the community has been asking for a very long time. Before we get to the good stuff, let's take a look at his close heavy. Previously it was 10 frame startup. So if you try to use this after launching the opponent from the ground with a Raging Strike, it didn't combo. Close heavy is now 1 frame faster, becoming a 9 frame heavy. While you still don't get this to link after launching the opponent in a grounded position with a Raging Strike, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be new combo routes and new links that you can get because of this buff. It also means it's a better frame trapping tool since it has an extra frame of speed. There has been a change to the behavior of close heavy on a counter hit as well. Previously, the opponent remained on the ground. This was not that great for Lowain, since if he got a counter hit with this normal, which could be used as his DP punish starter move, then he wasn't going to be able to link into a second close heavy. So basically, you had to go into triple strike sequences and then just route from there. Now let's talk about the behavior on counter hit for close heavy in the new patch. Now the second hit will launch if you counter hit the opponent with either the first or the second hit. This is described as a buff since it allows Lowain to get follow-ups, but I think this is a bit misleading unless there's something I'm missing. For example, if I get this in the corner, I can do triple strike as always, but all of a sudden, instead of getting a grounded sequence, I'm getting an aerial sequence and I need to dramatically shorten my combo. Or I can't link a close light here, so that means I can't all of a sudden link another close heavy or another close medium in this circumstance. And additionally, it's not like I'm seeing any new links into other special moves of Lowain. Cat bots don't combo. Awesome Sauce works, but it also worked before off of just a normal triple strike sequence. Additionally, it's not like all of a sudden the wheel's going to work or anything. So you just get a counter hit launch here and the opponent is airborne, and all of a sudden you have to route around combo limit. There might be something here if you already have something in place. But like, there's nothing really I can sort of think of here to actually justify calling this as a buff. I think it's a nerf, but maybe there's something I'm missing. Far Heavy has a change to it as well and is described as a buff. There's more pushback to it on block, meaning that it's going to be better at creating space traps for Lowain. Previously, if you were a little too close to the opponent and you wanted to call Sammy and Tommy in some way, the opponent could check you with the right normal. Or if your spacing was bad. If your spacing was a little bit better, then you could maybe get away with this. Now, Far Heavy has much more pushback on block. As you can see, the opponent is pushed pretty far away, meaning that you should be able to pretty consistently get spacing traps with Lowain at this distance. So this does create some interesting spacing mind games for Lowain. Dash Medium has a change to its hurt box during recovery. It's now more in line with its crouching hurt box. So previously, in a situation like this where Baran is going to press his Far Medium, if I'm crouching, I get caught here. But if I'm in the recovery of my Dash Medium, then I'm low profiling it. And now, the vertical hurt box for Dash Medium has been raised so that it matches Lowain's crouching hurt box, meaning that you no longer have to go for like low reaching normals in order to punish this move on whiff. As you can see here, Lowain actually gets counter hit and punish right here. This is a nice quality of life change so that you don't have to press a button and accidentally whiff against Lowain in this circumstance. This next section is going to get a little convoluted, but there's been several adjustments, mostly nerfs, to Lowain's unique attack, Don't Mind If I Do, where he cooks up a meal for himself and either regenerates life or super skybound gauge. To save us all a little bit of time, I'm going to talk about the properties of all the items that Lowain could pull from Don't Mind If I Do individually, comparing them to their old version, and then move on to talking about them in the new version of the game. Don't Mind If I Do Corn, the small HP recovery, used to give him 500 HP and had a 20% chance to appear. So the lowest reward healing option used to have one of the lower appearance rates. The medium version of his health recovery, which is meat, used to have a 30% chance to appear and restore 1200 of its HP. And lastly, the health recovery big option for him, Pasta Napolitina, used to restore 2250 HP. I'm not sure what the appearance rate was for this option, but I'm pretty sure it was well below 30%. Now, moving on, fun fact, there's actually a training mode glitch right now. This here says SBA gauge boost big, but it's actually his small SBA gauge boost, which is the salad. This used to have an appearance rate of 30%. For his large SBA gauge boost, Parfait, it used to restore about 30% of his SBA gauge and had a 10% chance to appear. This is a pretty massive swing, as if Lowain pulls this out, he's almost getting access to another ultimate skill within the round. This whole part of Lowain's kit is one of the reasons why he was a very strong character. If you were slow playing him in neutral, or if he had a long enough distance away with a knockdown, he'd be able to get free Skybound gauge and free HP, effectively increasing how tanky he was, as well as how often he had access to some very strong special moves, one of which we'll get to a little later in the video. Now let's take a look at how they adjusted the appearance rates as well as the stats that these items give. Now let's talk about the Don't Mind If I Do items in the new patch of the game. Corn has a small buff. It used to restore 400 HP, and now restores 500 HP. So a small increase. However, this is accompanied with a nerf. The move, or this item, used to have an appearance rate of 20%. That's now been increased to 30%. So Lowain is now more likely to get the lower rewarding healing item in his kit than the more rewarding meat and pasta. Now, moving on to meat, the recovery has been reduced by 200, going from 1200 total to 1000 total. Additionally, the appearance rate has decreased from 30% to 20%. This means that Lowain not only is regenerating less health when he does get meat, he's not going to be seeing meat as often as he was before, greatly reducing how tanky of a character he's going to be if he's able to use more Don't Mind If I Do's within a single round. Moving on to health recovery big, the recovery has been reduced by 250, going from 2,250 to an even 2,000. It's still fairly impressive, but it is going to be taking off some of that unnecessary fat, if you will, from Lowain, so he should be a little less tanky overall in games. Funnily enough, the Don't Mind If I Do character settings is still bugged, where it shows big here when it's actually the small salad SBA gauge buildup. Speaking of salad, the appearance rate has been reduced from 30% to 20%. This overall means that Lowain should not be seeing this item as often, and so he's not going to be generating as much of the Skybound gauge as he was previously. Excuse me, I mashed heavy a little too hard there. The last change to go over is going to be to Parfait, his big SBA gauge boost. So, the thing about this one is that the Skybound gauge used to give him a flat 30%, which was a lot of Skybound. It's almost been cut in half, going to only a 16% increase. This means that he's not going to be able to freely build up as much gauge if he pulls this item, and he's not going to be able to therefore spam as much of his amazing special moves, or ultimate special moves, as he was previously. In addition to that, the appearance rate, though, has been doubled from 10% to 20%. So, you're twice as likely to see this item, technically, but you're not getting as much rewards for it. You need to eat this twice to get just a little over what you were getting previously from one of these items. These changes should mean that Lowain is a lot more meter hungry, as well as not as tanky as he was before. And I think that these are decent changes. Could they have done more? Probably, but I think it's a good step in the right direction for Lowain. Now for probably the single most clamored for, the single most demanded, prayed for, tweeted for, everything that this patch has been building up to, I think, has been this nerf to Ultimate Sammy and Tommy. Previously, if Lowain got into the startup of this move, that wheel was coming for your ass. So basically, Lowain just had a free access to a rolling screen fireball that could reset you to neutral, that could catch you if you caught him out. Like, it was obnoxious for everybody to fight against. People hated this move if they were fighting against Lowain players, because it was the epitome of obnoxiousness with ultimate skills in the previous versions of Granblue Fantasy vs. Rising. And now finally, after all this time, if you hit Lowain in the first 24 frames of the move, or the first 13 frames if you include the screen slowdown effect, the projectile will disappear. Amazing, immaculate, no notes. Everybody has been clamoring for this change for years, and now Lowain can't just throw out this move willy-nilly and basically be consequence-free. He actually has to be considerate of when he's going to use this move, especially at close ranges. This is a really huge nerf, but a deserved one. Now for the ultimate version of Come At Me Bro, where Lowain will actually lash out like a DP and end in the animation of his dash medium attack. Just like dash medium, the vertical hurt box has been expanded upwards. So previously, as you can see here, if you tried to start off with like a medium range normal, Lowain could low profile it. And just like how dash medium got changed, there's now that same crouching hurt box on the recovery frames of ultimate Come At Me Bro. So now you can punish Lowain with pretty much any normal. The medium, heavy, and ultimate versions of Awesome Sauce also have an adjustment. This is namely a buff, and unfortunately I'm not really going to be able to demonstrate this here, but I'll try to just make a point of it. So previously, there could be some times where if you were using this against an airborne opponent, the first hit would connect, but then the second hit wouldn't, and the opponent would fall out. This would happen in like a couple of situations, maybe in like some combo routes, for example, or maybe in like situations where you somehow hit the opponent using this in like an anti-air combo. I don't really have a good example on hand. Now, the medium, heavy, and ultimate versions of Awesome Sauce have a higher hitbox after the first hit connects, meaning that this should be a lot more consistent in your air combos. Again, I don't have a really good example here, but if there are Lowain players who have some experience in particular combo routes being finicky before this change, let us know in the comments. There's a nerf to Humid Pyramid attack here. Its finishing move, Moment of Truth, which ends the super, has its behavior on hit and block adjusted and standardized. Previously, if you space this attack out, you could adjust the amount of advantage that Lowain had. So at max range like this, if you got the guard crush, you could actually be +1. Compare that to at point blank, where you would be -6 and punishable. Now the Moment of Truth has standardized behavior on block and on hit regardless of the range. Instead of being able to space this move out to be like +1 in some situations, it's now always -6. In addition to that, on block there isn't as much pushback, so Lowain should be right next to the opponent to eat a 6-frame punish. So this should just be like a small nerf to some situations. This wasn't like the biggest thing that Lowain players were abusing or anything like that, but it does remove some of that variance factor where the opponent and Lowain are guessing who's plus and negative in this situation. Now, pretty much no Lowain player should be using this to end their string on block. There's a couple of adjustments to Lowain's Super Skybound Arch Try This On for size, where he and the bros are saved by Iggy. So let's go ahead and talk about a new behavior they added. Previously, if you went into this form, you were stuck in this form for the entire duration. And so if you were up against an opponent that could pass the knowledge checks and had really good defense against it, you were just adding time on to the match as opposed to making progress. Again, it was still decent to go into because you did force them to play the minigame, but there really wasn't much utility. It was fairly one-dimensional. Now when you perform Try This On for size, you can actually end the super by pressing the skill button. If you do this, however, you have a lot more recovery than if this super just ended manually, so do keep that in mind. There is one thing I think that this has some application for, but we'll take a look at that later. 3 things have changed to Earth Pillar, Iggy's light attack. So, the recovery has been reduced, the block stun has been reduced, namely to make sure that behavior on block stays the same between the versions, and the mid-air hit stun has been reduced. So the reduction in recovery is actually a buff. Previously, on whiff, this was -64. On block, it was +7, which most of Iggy's attacks are in this state. Additionally, if you hit the opponent in the air, then they actually fall down to the ground, and so you would have a little more time to get your next wave of offense going. Now for the changes to Earth Pillar. The recovery has 9 less frames to it, so now you're able to act out of this sooner. On whiff, you're -55. To make sure that all of a sudden you don't have more plus frames on block, they did take away 9 frames of block stun. But this is just to make sure that you're still +7 on block here. There is a nerf to it though. If the opponent were to get caught airborne, there's less hit stun to it now. So, the opponent now recovers in air, giving you less time to set up meaty projectiles and the like against them. So it is a little bit of a nerf here, but this should somewhat change the dynamics of the opponent spot dodging it or anything like that, allowing you to send out the next attack from Iggy a little bit faster. The last change to Iggy comes to Axe's Mundite, the medium attack that she can perform. Previously, if Iggy's form was about to run out, and you threw out this attack, then the projectile itself would disappear. Now, Axis Mundi will remain on screen and active even as your super ends. You can use this either by timing it so that as the timer expires, you have some coverage using this projectile to give yourself a little more safety once the super ends, or you can fully charge it from about full screen range, end the super manually, and then be +5 instead of like -66. So there is a little something there. I guess this is just a tool to make sure that Lowain isn't going to be getting as punished as often once the super is over. Lowain has been a strong character and one that has been frustrating the Granblue community for quite some time. I think that this patch should do a lot to deal with some of the more annoying factors to him. He's generating less free skybound gauge for playing passively. He's generating less health for playing passively as well. Meanwhile, I do think that some of his combo routes, named like his counter hit combo routes, might be a little worse for wear, but I might also just be missing some crazy sauce that I have yet to see from Twitter. In addition to that, a bunch of the frustrating things about the character, like his low profile hurt boxes on whiffing, his dash medium, or his ultimate come at me bro, have been dealt with. So now pretty much everybody should be getting the same punishes on him for whiffing it, and those moves are of course more risky to throw out because of that. Not to mention too that the wheel is like dead. The wheel has been dealt with. It's still going to be a really good special move, but it's not going to be egregious or annoying at those close range situations where a Lowain player just says, I got meter, I'm going to spend it on wheel now. I think this is a pretty fair patch to Lowain where he still has quite a lot of strength. He still has excellent mobility. He still has really good setup zoning, mix-up play, and everything else like that. Just some of like those more frustrating elements have been toned down, and I think that's for the better. I still think that he's going to be a very strong character, but maybe we're not going to be ripping out as many of our own hairs fighting him.